The chair recognizes the honourable member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I thank Almighty God for this opportunity to once again have a chance on behalf of the people of Marco City to share their views on the role we should be playing in helping them realize their dreams and aspirations. By extension, Madam Speaker, I also echo the dreams and aspirations of so many Bahamians in general around this country, but also those in Grand Bahama, where I live, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, today we debate the resolution for the guarantee. Madam Speaker, this resolution has been tabled by the government with a view of making the case that they are borrowing or guaranteeing the borrowing, and we think it is both, borrowing $1.8 thereabout million. Madam Speaker, I just want to begin by saying what made this mind-boggling, what makes this mind-boggling.
Incredible.
Here's a government that talked about increased revenue of around $1 billion. That's on top of what we were earning annually, I believe north of $3 billion. And the government is seeking to guarantee to borrow $1.8 million that they can, Madam Speaker, they can get out of the government's to use the proverbial car ashtray. But we've come to debate a resolution for the government to execute this, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, to listen to the member for Pine Ridge talk about the transformation of the international bazaar and that particular area, which, by the way, the members in here from Grand Bahama and by extension the rest of the party, we support the transformation of that site. We want that eyesore to be removed and transformed into a productive asset for the Bahamian people in general, Grand Bahama in particular. But when you talk about it in isolation, it makes us wonder to what extent you are invested in the overall transformation of Grand Bahama, because that is but one of many eyesores that cause us pause, that cause us to be concerned about the government's lack of urgency in addressing so many eyesores on the island of Grand Bahama. So many streets that we drive now, and you find yourself subconsciously sighing because you could remember when the street was bustling with business or teeming with economic activity. So we would love to partner with the government in doing productive things to revitalize all of Grand Bahama. Much of what we see in Grand Bahama today, this administration forecasted that they would be able to effectively address. So I find it quite amazing that you seek to isolate a small area in the commercial district in Freeport when there are numerous areas that require our attention that this administration has failed to address. We find it rich that the Deputy Prime Minister, who we would have thought, who is now the acting Minister of Finance, and I believe in the absence of the Prime Minister being in town, didn't deliver the midterm budget statement. We found that quite unusual. But he sought to second. Sorry.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Mr. Margaret Island.
Prime Minister himself, who is currently out of country on CARICOM matters. He will make a substantive communication next week, Madam Speaker. I think that was made abundantly clear.
It did. It was.
Yes, as I said, Madam Speaker, it was quite ironic that the acting Prime Minister did not make the budget statement to date a later report. But second, Madam Speaker, this resolution Madam Speaker, obviously,
Why they do you like that?
second this resolution to borrow $1.8 million that the government could have gotten from almost anywhere to execute the preparatory work for this for the Afro-Caribbean marketplace, Madam Speaker. What made that rich, Madam Speaker, is that the member has been sidelined in Grand Bahama by the Prime Minister.
That's true.
The Prime Minister proceeded in a fundamentally different direction than the member for Exuma and the Ragged Islands, Madam Speaker.
Been sidelined today.
The member for Exuma and Ragged Islands came to Grand Bahama and made the point, and again came in this place and made the point, that Grand Bahama is booming. Madam Speaker, one of the marks of serious leadership is that you ought to speak in a very measured way about the conditions of an island and the challenges that a people face. So, Madam Speaker, I used to caution the member for Exuma because we saw him as the future of the PLP,
Yes.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, that is true.
He now has a tremendous amount of competition that I know is a source of stress for him, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, we used to caution him. We used to caution him, Madam Speaker, not to overpromise and under-deliver. And in Grand Bahama, Madam Speaker, the hallmark of the work he has done has been to overpromise Grand Bahamians, Madam Speaker,
Yes.
and under-deliver. It is the same member, Madam Speaker, who said that $120 million for the acquisition of the Grand Lucayan was in the bank. He didn't say possibly, in future would be. He said $120 million, Madam Speaker, was in the bank. And then he was aided and abetted by the member for Kit Island, Wamkey, and San Salvador in his silence to say, yes, it was done. But, Madam Speaker, today, no evidence have been presented that it has been fully executed and that $120 million is in the bank. In fact, Madam Speaker, there's no evidence that 100 or 75 or 50 or 30 or $10 million is in the bank. And if it were in the bank, Madam Speaker, the government would have to explain
Where the money?
to the hurting 200 plus staff members of the Grand Lucayan why the water is off, why some of them are still owed, and why they are being sent home, Madam Speaker, with no certainty or confidence of return for a deal that they say is solidified, that the deal is done. But, Madam Speaker, I wouldn't dwell on what has been said by the member for Exuma and Ragged Island because, Madam Speaker, he's our generation, and clearly he's taking a bit of our advice not to overpromise and underdeliver, as he also did on the airport, Madam Speaker. Because now when they ask him about Grand Lucayan, he say, go ask the Prime Minister. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, he say, I don't want no part of that.
No.
Because I don't know what he's doing. Yeah. I don't know who he's collaborating with. All I know it's not with me, Madam Speaker. And so we just want to say that we support any initiative that has the potential to be beneficial to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, we share the member opposite confidence in building a firm relationship with the continent of Africa and the various countries who we believe can be wonderful partners in the long term. We are prepared to do business, Madam Speaker, when we take government in the not-too-distant future. We intend to do business across the globe, inclusive of the continent of Africa, who we believe is teeming with opportunities and pregnant with possibilities for us to collaborate. And we also, Madam Speaker, reaffirm our commitment to work with not only Latin America, but the Caribbean community, Madam Speaker, in doing joint ventures that can be beneficial to the region and then, of course, beneficial to the Bahamas. What we are concerned about, however, however, Madam Speaker, is the manner in which this administration executes arrangements. So the first point really is that we again, 1.8 million could have been allocated from anywhere. So this is much ado, Madam Speaker, that we're surprised about. And so today I rise to address this resolution, Madam Speaker, with seriousness, because whenever the government asks the Parliament to guarantee public funds, even in an amount that some would describe as modest, it is our duty to examine it with discipline, caution, Madam Speaker, and clarity. And so the government is asking this House to approve a guarantee of $1.8 million in connection with a proposed development initiative in Grand Bahama. I remind the public, Madam Speaker, that the last time well, certainly one of the previous times the member for Pine Ridge talked about this issue, at that time she did not have her ducks in a row and was rebuked by the chairman of the Grand Bahama Port Authority, Madam Speaker. So I was surprised to hear her double down on the various shareholders in that property who expressed concern about the government's approach in the compulsory acquisition, Madam Speaker. And she talked about their unrealistic expectations of what their compensation should be. I would think that one would have wanted to leave that alone, especially since government is such a bad pay. And whenever you hear about compulsory acquisition, you wonder when will the people see the money. And this government especially is bad paid, Madam Speaker. We're having challenges paying for medication, paying the doctors who supply services to the National Health Insurance Program, paying small home repair contractors, Madam Speaker, that is those that are still employed. Because many of them, Madam Speaker, and of course, teachers and nurses, Madam Speaker, as well. Police officers who are still worrying about their gratuities. Custom officers, Madam Speaker, who immigration officers, Madam Speaker, people who are expressing concern. So this government is a bad pay. So we trust that the compulsory acquisition will be followed with real money, Madam Speaker. We heard the member also talk about these large numbers of inward investment in Grand Bahama. I mean, the question is, who's feeling what has been announced? And by the way, the Grand Bahama Port Authority and the government reads from the same hymn sheet in terms of what investments are flowing in that they are responsible for. So the government is claiming some of the very same projects that GBPA is indicating that their efforts have caused to flow into Grand Bahama, Madam Speaker. And so it's very difficult to, Madam Speaker, to separate who's doing what. And so let me state from the outset, Madam Speaker, we support any meaningful development in Grand Bahama. We support investment and we support revitalization, Madam Speaker, but unfortunately this government has overpromised and under-delivered, Madam Speaker, in Grand Bahama. Madam Speaker, we believe that there is a need for the government to work in tandem with all stakeholders, Madam Speaker, to safeguard against some of the shocks that Grand Bahama is prone to experiencing, Madam Speaker. We would have expected that there would have been a more robust program of building seawalls, Madam Speaker, throughout Grand Bahama, in particular, Madam Speaker, in West Grand Bahama and East Grand Bahama, Madam Speaker. And in West Grand Bahama, you had an opportunity, Madam Speaker, which is what we will do when given an opportunity, to build whole promenades, Madam Speaker, where Madam Speaker, where businesses can thrive, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, in West Grand Bahama, the promise in excess of $1 billion of development has not materialized in West Grand Bahama, Madam Speaker. It has not materialized, Madam Speaker. And even projects the government announced for West and Grand Bahama, we know that some who should know better have been trying to redirect it just to Boodle Bay, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, Grand Bahama has waited patiently, Madam Speaker. It has listened to promises about Grand Lucayan, Madam Speaker. It's heard timelines about the airport, Madam Speaker. It's been assured of major investments being imminent, Madam Speaker, but yet we do not see them. We promised a tremendous amount of development in West Grand Bahama, Madam Speaker, and now we hear from the Member of Parliament, mum's the word, Madam Speaker, Those projects are not materializing, and so daily he faces tall pressure as he moves through the community, unable to point to the fulfillment of commitments made by the full cabinet when they came down, Madam Speaker. And so yet after 5 years, Madam Speaker, too many of those promises remained unfinished, delayed, or unclear. The people of Grand Bahama do not need more announcements, which is, Madam Speaker, the nature of what is happening here, both by the mover and the seconder of this resolution. They need execution. They need follow-through. They need a government that moves beyond press conferences, breaking ground, and deliver results on the ground. That is precisely why this resolution must be examined carefully. Because when a government like this, with a record of delays and incomplete projects, asks the Parliament to guarantee public funds, it is our responsibility, Madam Speaker, to ensure that this is not just another headline without structure, another promise without a plan, another obligation that leaves taxpayers exposed. Madam Speaker, we support Grand Bahama. We support it by the work we do every day. And that's why we are active, Madam Speaker, in our constituencies, working on behalf of the people, Madam Speaker. What I do not support is the development wrapped in uncertainty and finance in ways that places the public at risk without clear answers, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this resolution raises fundamental questions that remain unanswered. We were told repeatedly that this government has restored fiscal stability. We are told that revenues are strong and that deficits are narrowed and that the economy has rebounded and that the country is on a disciplined financial path. The public is told, Madam Speaker, that weekly revenue collections are robust and that the government's fiscal position is stable and improving. So against this background, against this backdrop, Madam Speaker, Parliament is now being asked, this same government with robust revenues, they're asking us to guarantee a loan for $1.8 million, an amount slightly above, Madam Speaker, one of the trips they took to go to COP, Madam Speaker, $1 million plus to go to a meeting, Madam Speaker, unless they want to tell us that they were out there fighting for climate justice, Madam Speaker. They have not been good environmental stewards at home, Madam Speaker. It's an administration where almost every elevation in this country, Madam Speaker, and I meant to say this over and over before, almost every elevation in this country, we in the Parliament are continuing to allow private developers to cut down these elevations, Madam Speaker. A low-lying country where with a 1 or 2 degree rise in sea level, much of the foreshore has the potential for disappearing. And the few places we have elevation, we are presiding over cutting it down. Yet we are spending $1 million to fly around the world to talk about climate justice, and we are unable to be good stewards right here at home, Madam Speaker. If the fiscal story told by this administration is accurate, then this resolution requires an explanation. 1.8 being borrowed, guaranteed. A government that collects tens of millions of dollars each week should not need to seek a foreign loan with a guarantee for an amount of this scale without clearly explaining why internal financing is not possible, why this approach is preferable, and what risk analysis has been conducted before the request, Madam Speaker, came to this House. This is not a trivial procedural, Madam Speaker. A sovereign guarantee places full faith and weight of the credit of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas behind each financial obligation. If this is truly a public-private partnership, it would have been wonderful for that public-private partnership to kick in on day one, Madam Speaker. Therefore, the first question that must be answered, Madam Speaker, and should be answered simply and directly. Why is a guarantee necessary at all? Was a full business case prepared? Was a full business case prepared? You would remember, Madam Speaker, that when the Grand Bahama Port Authority, Madam Speaker, took issue with remarks made by Pine Ridge some months ago, it was because they had seen no feasibility study, no business case had been prepared, Madam Speaker, even though the distinct impression given by the member at that time was that they had done all of the background work, Madam Speaker. And so the question is, was
the honourable member for Pine Ridge?
It's a point of order.
Point of order. we would have already addressed this same matter, Madam Speaker, that the project preparation facility is the feasibility study. We stated this over and over to the Grand Mountain Port Authority, and we also brought that information to the House of Assembly. So that has already been cleared. And so to the member from Marco City, hopefully you won't use that point again.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Feasibility study now. This is paying for it. So, Madam Speaker, what I said, Madam Speaker, it certainly didn't correct what I said. And let me just read into the listeners' hearing what was said then by the Grand Bahama Port Authority Chairman. He says, there is no financial plan, and in every business deal, you must have a financial plan. You must have a business plan to determine if a deal is feasible. We have not seen that, and I don't think one exists. So once we see a feasibility plan, we are willing to do our part to facilitate anything that would bring new life to the international bazaar. So I'm just saying that. So he was right. I'm just saying, Madam Speaker, that the work that was projected to have been done or insinuated to have been done was in fact not done, Madam Speaker. That's all I'm saying.
The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Pine Ridge.
When this matter came up and I returned to the House of Assembly, I tabled this document that indicated our communication with the Grand Bahama Port Authority, and that in a letter that was addressed in November 2024 from the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, we indicated that the feasibility study was the project preparation facility and that we were in that phase. And so the note indicated, we again reiterate that we are in the project preparation facility phase of the development of the marketplace with funding from Afrexim Bank. The PPF is designed to provide funding for the architectural and engineering design of the marketplace, project management costs, financial models, environmental and social impact studies, promotional, marketing, and strategic plans, and other documents and technical support. Also included in the letter were attachments of the owner's agreement to sell, yada, yada, yada. In a Tribune article dated 5th of March 2025, the President of the Port did indicate what the member from Marco City just said. I said also that the statement was disingenuous since it had been clearly communicated to GBPA on numerous occasions that the purpose of the PPF was to develop the feasibility study and financial modeling. The acquisition of the land is one of the prerequisites of the PPF, and that's the process we were going through, because at that time, the Port Authority indicated that they were owed some $1.5 million, and this is what we were negotiating. So from the onset, we indicated that the project preparation facility that we were undertaking was the feasibility study.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Pine Ridge for confirming the point that I'd made, that initially when she gave the impression that they were proceeding on a part where preliminary work, that is the business case, had been made, at that time it was not made. And all and sundry, the public, the opposition, the Port Authority, everybody recognized that, again, the business case was not made, the feasibility study was not completed. So what she's indicating now is that they are in the process of doing that. And Madam Speaker, we wait to see what the feasibility study produces. We want projects to work. We have no difficulty in supporting initiatives that have the potential to help our people in Grand Bahama, Madam Speaker. And we speak in a measured way about the community we love, the people we serve. We just take issue when we have politicians who come and beat up their chests and describe a scenario on an island where people are hurting in a false manner rather than roll up their sleeves and do the work to make what they're bragging about a reality. That's what we take issue with, Madam Speaker. So we take issue with a hospital that has the challenges that it has. When I say again, Madam Speaker, those of us in here, those, especially if you're a minister in this country, you have health insurance. You are able to go on the private ward if you like. You're able to go overseas if you like. But people, if you live in Grand Bahama and you cannot afford to come to Nassau, go to Miami to get an MRI, you could be in trouble, or some other get diagnostic equipment that is not available at the RAN or may not be working in another facility. You have to fly out. So when we come in here, we are coming to petition on behalf of them, not to hear somebody who doesn't face that reality run on about how things are booming. And the question is, booming for who? Not for most of the people that Pine Ridge serve, or Marco City serve, or Central, or West, or East serve. They have a different reality. So don't come trying to score brownie points by over-promising or claiming that some things are happening that are not happening. We are prepared to collaborate with this government, but Madam Speaker, we can't sign off on talks that we know are not accurate about reality on the ground. So, Madam Speaker, with respect to this resolution, we must examine, Madam Speaker, the institutional structure behind the project, Madam Speaker, just so that the minister can get it right and we can be on our way and get something concrete done. If the government-owned entity or special purpose vehicle is involved, has it complied with the Public Finance Management Act? Does it have an approved corporate statement of intent? Does it have a properly constituted board? Has an auditor been assigned? Has the Ministry of Finance reviewed and signed off on the financial exposure? Madam Speaker, these are simple things that we ask. And so, Madam Speaker, again, we hear the member for Exuma and Ragged Island, Madam Speaker, from his seat. But we remind him the reasons these questions are important, Madam Speaker, because this is an administration that are serial lawbreakers. They do not comply, Madam Speaker, with things like the Procurement Act, Madam Speaker. We asked the member for Exuma and Ragged Island, when last has he put out to bid or have a request for proposal for the multiplicity of contracts signed either in Ministry of Tourism or through the Tourism Development Corporation? We want to know when last have they laid the different state-owned enterprises, Madam Speaker? When is the last time, Madam Speaker, they have published who they gave contracts to and whether it was true competitive bidding? They do not. They are north of $500 million in direct awards with no competitive bid, Madam Speaker. Think about that for a moment. In a society where we are trying to create multiple shareholders in this national development process, this is an administration that is empowering a handful of families and companies rather than allowing the vast majority of Bahamians to be able to engage in competitive bidding, Madam Speaker, so we could be guaranteed the best product and service at the most affordable rate. So we ask these questions because of their track record. I caution this House against the line of thinking that this government wishes for us to just sign off on. Fiscal discipline does not begin at $100 million. It begins at $1, Madam Speaker. At a time when police officers are raising concerns about benefits, when healthcare providers are awaiting timely payments, when public servants, Madam Speaker, have experienced delays in allowances and adjustments, the government must be especially careful in how it presents new and how it enters into new financial arrangements, Madam Speaker. Confidence, Madam Speaker, in public financial management depends not only on the macroeconomic indicators, but it also depends on the daily experience of those who depend on the state to meet its obligation reliably. It's a problem when companies that provide medicine are looking at providing items to the government on a cash-only basis. It's a problem, Madam Speaker. Grand Bahama has heard many announcements. It has heard about the hotel that remains shuttered, Madam Speaker. It has heard about an airport that the member for Exuma and Ragged said Phase 1 would have been completed in 2025. Madam Speaker, we're in 2026.
Jackie Gallando.
And they are still, Madam Speaker, making promises about the airport, Madam Speaker. We believe that a mature government, ministers ought to work in tandem with each other to make sure that projects see the light of day and our people benefit. And we believe, Madam Speaker, that one of the most compelling arguments as to why they are failing continually in Grand Bahama. There are too many competing interests in the Davis-Cooper cabinet, Madam Speaker. They seem not to be able, Madam Speaker, to get on the same table in making decisions as a unified government in the best interest of Grand Bahama, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, it is our hope that this project that's being talked about by the member for Pine Ridge would enjoy, Madam Speaker, the unanimous support of the Cabinet, Madam Speaker. But if we are to judge based on the airport and the lack of progress, or the hotel and the lack of progress, it is safe to say, Madam Speaker, we may be in for a rough ride. Madam Speaker, we should not allow our personal legacy building strategies to affect what is in the best interest of the country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have just had, Madam Speaker, a reconfiguration of the boundaries at Grand Bahama. Madam Speaker, the member for Exuma and Ragged Island participated it presided over the adjustment, Madam Speaker, of the boundaries for Marco City. Marco City, Madam Speaker, by the way, is now the second largest constituency based on amount of voters after East Grand Bahama. Madam Speaker, I don't know how much, and maybe East Grand Bahama can comment on it, how many millions have been allocated to do work in East Grand Bahama, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, it isn't a whole lot. The same thing is true for Central. Not a whole lot, Madam Speaker. In Marco City, I could say it's less than $1 million allocated. Kill Island, Rumkeen, we have 6,400 voters, 6,400. Not $1 million, I believe, is spent by central government, save and except through salaries and those kinds of things, but not in any development, in capital development in the two largest constituencies in terms of population. Kill Island, Rumkeen, and Salvador, I believe, is between 150 to $200 million, Madam Speaker, being spent in Kidd Island. And then, Madam Speaker, in terms of boundaries reconfiguration, for no explicable reason, again, led by the member for Exuma and Ragged Island, they took the International Bazaar, that is the subject of this discussion here, and they took it out of Marco. Yes, of course. St. Barnabas was in the room, but presided. But Madam Speaker, they took the International Bazaar out of Marco City to put inside Pine Ridge, Madam Speaker. Hey, the legacy building projects. It is our hope, Madam Speaker, that the same vigilance with which they engage in a surgical cut of a commercial district, take it out of Marco City to put in Pine Ridge, that they deliver on behalf of those people. I hope they can deliver, Madam Speaker, on behalf of those people, Madam Speaker. Because in Marco City, Madam Speaker, we serve all Bahamians. We don't care if you're FNM or PLP. Your track record of voting is not relevant to us. We service all Bahamians. And so since Pine Ridge, since Exuma and Ragged Island went out of their way to strip a portion of the commercial district out of Pine Ridge and put it into out of Marco City and put it into Pine Ridge, I hope you serve the people with distinction. Having said all that, Madam Speaker, we just simply conclude by saying to this government, Madam Speaker, it's important for them to be good stewards of our finances. If you have raised all this money that you have claimed, please pay the public servants what you promised. Please pay the police. Please invest in more fire engines. Please invest in more ambulances. Please pay the pensions and gratuity for police officers, Madam Speaker, and serve all Bahamians, not a few families, not a few companies. Serve the Bahamian people in general, Madam Speaker.